Another useful capability in Fiddler is the ability to apply filters, which can control what is going to be displayed in Fiddler, but can also impact what sort of requests will succeed or not succeed. So just a note, you can save and load your favorite filters. So if you have certain filters that you want to apply, that you want to use each time you use Fiddler, you are able to save off the filters you have in place, and you're also able to load them on another use of Fiddler. So some of the filters control what will actually show up. So I can choose to filter to only show particular file types. I can also hide things like images if I don't want to see those. We talked earlier about authentication requests, the 401s, the 407s that you would get with authentication or proxy server authentication. If you don't want to see those can be hidden. You can hide redirects. You could also hide small or large files. So if it turned out that you wanted to do a performance evaluation and you were primarily concerned about files that were bigger than, say, 50 or 100K, you can specify that you only want to see the large files in that case. You can also use filters to do blocking. So if you want to see what would happen if my images were not returned, or my scripts didn't work, or my CSS files could not be loaded, how would the web page respond on the client? That's easy to do by applying blocks through Fiddler. We've already seen the time heat map, but that's the ability to set that filter, and Fiddler will use its internal settings to decide with responses that come back, how slow are they. So they'll either be the default color, they'll be yellow, or they'll be red if they're various levels of slowness. You can turn on help troubleshoot filters. So if you've applied filters and you suddenly don't see some web sessions you expected to see, if you turn on the help troubleshoot filters, it will actually leave all of the web sessions in the list, but it'll put a strike through all of those that would have not shown up based on your filters. So you can play with your filters and see what would be shown or not shown to help you figure out why you can't see things and what might be wrong with your filters. And they've added the capability in Fiddler. They've got a UI that does most of the basic filters, which we're going to look at now. It's much more customizable than that because Fiddler can actually look at Fiddler script, and you can programmatically, either through the JavaScript.net or through a normal .NET language, have a lot more control over what gets shown, hidden, blocked, etc. The Filters tab in Fiddler is where the basic UI settings control what will get displayed or what can be blocked. So the first step would be to say that you want to use filters. If I had particular hosts or domains, so if I use, for instance, a CDN, and I had a particular domain in my request, I could exclude or show only those. So let's pull up a web page again. So if we come back, we can say we want to use filters. In this case, it all comes from one host. So first of all, I can say intranet or internet requests. And I can either hide or show particular hosts, or I could flag particular hosts. So if I had stuff coming from a CDN network and I wanted to see that in a different color, I could specify that. I can also choose to show only traffic from particular processes. So if I had multiple processes running on my machine, all of which were making HTTP requests that were being trapped by Fiddler, I could choose to show, for instance, a specific process, or I could show only Internet Explorer traffic. I can show request headers only if the URL contains certain things, or flag requests that have a header. So if I'm interested in those that have the accept gzip, so I could see if they're requesting compression correctly. I can also set a request header, so even if the client is not sending up a particular header, I could choose to force that header to be sent with every request by saying set request header and enter it here. We're going to talk about breakpoints later, so I'll skip those. I can hide particular status codes. So for instance, if I said earlier I didn't want to see any of the authentication demands, in my case I'm not using a proxy, I'm not using authentication. But if I were doing a trace where those showed up and they're not really valuable for me to see, I can just choose to hide those. As I apply any of these filters, I can come up to the actions then and say to run them. And then again, I can choose to show files that are of a certain size. So I want to hide those that are smaller than or greater than a certain size. We saw the time heat map earlier that breaks down and colors the sessions based on how fast the responses were. And then you can also do things like if I want to see what would happen, for instance, I happen to load script files from a CDN network. If I wanted to see what would happen if those script requests actually failed, I could say I want to block script files. Then as the browser came through the server, it would say I don't want any of my script files to actually succeed to be downloaded, and I could see what would happen to the client. And then again, I can show different sessions based on response headers. So if I want to see those that set cookies or that have a particular header, I can do that as well. So again, I will come up, I will choose what I want to see. In this case, let's say I want to actually hide successes. Well, let's do this. Let's hide anything that is smaller than 10K. Now when I come up and hit my actions, run the filter set now, you'll see all the requests that were less than 10K disappear. So now I can focus on the larger files and I don't have to wade through all of the smaller files. Again, if I want to, I can save the filter set so I can load it into another session as well.